Your fantasy playoffs are quickly approaching, and in this video, we are going to be breaking down the 10 running backs you should be stashing that can actually help you win your league. These are guys that are available in way more than 50% of fantasy leagues right now, and they're just one injury away from potentially being league winners. So go stash these guys before your friends do, and we'll start with the Miami Dolphins 4th round rookie running back out of Tennessee, Jalen Wright, who, look, he continued his nice role as the team's backup running back. Yes, ahead of the veteran Raheem Mostert in this backfield. Because according to PFF, as you can see right here, based on week 11, the most recent usage for this backfield, De'Von Achane, yes, he's the RB1, 42 snaps. But then you get Jalen Wright, 18 snaps compared to just 10 for Raheem Mostert. He's now been the running back 3 for the past 3 weeks. You can see 5 carries, 1 target, so 6 opportunities compared to just 3 for Raheem Mostert. So the rookie is seeing more work, and this has been the case since week 9 where Raheem Mostert had a fumble. Then in week 10 and 11, it's been Wright over Mostert. And that's resulted in just increased usage overall. You can see right here, this guy was really not involved in the offense at all, and lately he's seen 20, 24%, and 19% of the team's rushing attempts, over 20% of the team's rushing attempts since Mostert fumbled. And here's the deal. Right now, of course, De'Von Achane is the #1 running back in this backfield. But the whole point here is in case Achane was to go down, miss a game, or extended periods of time, Wright could be a league winner. Because in a limited sample without Achane this year, when Achane left in week 5 before the bye with a concussion, you saw Jalen Wright take on a lot more work. 13 carries, 86 yards in this game. He was averaging nearly 7 yards per touch on his 13 carries. And here's the deal. If you're not familiar with Jalen Wright, this is like the perfect offense for this guy to go into. Like if he went to any other offense, probably wouldn't have been as exciting for his NFL prospects. Because this is a young running back who spent 3 years in college at Tennessee. Now he broke out last year on always kind of limited workloads there. They always had multiple backs going, but he had over 1,000 yards rushing last year. He was averaging over 6 yards per touch. He continued to always be extremely efficient, not known as much of a pass catcher until he worked on that in his final year and put up 20 catches. If you follow college football, anything over 20 receptions for a running back is pretty strong. But perhaps the greatest part of his game was just how explosive he was in college. He led college football in explosive runs of 10 plus yards. Literally 26% of his carries went for at least 10 yards, which was more than double the college football average. And then he went to the NFL Combine and it was completely dynamic at 210 pounds, making him the biggest running back in this Dolphins backfield. He ran a 4.38 40. That's 98th percentile 40-yard dash, 95th percentile speed for his size. We know he's explosive, but based on those explosive run rate stats we said in college where he led the college football last year, 95th percentile burst according to Player Profiler. So he landed in the perfect spot. Miami is known for the speed, and right now he's already midway through the season moved from the RB3 to the RB2, and he's just one injury away from a guy in Achane who's had lots of injuries in his career and now is seeing a larger workload. Well, Wright, who is a little bit bigger of a back, can be more durable, can handle a red zone role if he was ever given it. He's one injury away, in my opinion, from being a weekly top 15, if not top 12 option at the position. Now, this next player, I kind of want to give it to a lot of people who are in really competitive leagues where maybe Jalen Wright is never going to be available. This next guy, I assume, is available in almost every league, just based on the stats that I'm looking at right now on Yahoo, where he's available in over 95% of leagues, and that's Tyler Goodson. And Tyler Goodson, you might be like, we remember this guy from earlier in the season, but a lot of people are just forgetting about him as an actual viable stash for your fantasy postseason, especially if you're a Jonathan Taylor fantasy manager, because that's exactly who Tyler Goodson is. He is the backup to Jonathan Taylor in this backfield. Jonathan Taylor, who has already missed a month of the season this year with a high ankle sprain, who has had plenty of ankle injuries, not only in college, but multiple times in his NFL career that have kept him out for extended periods of time. And this is a running back in Jonathan Taylor who is now getting the workhorse usage once again, as you would expect. He's an elite talent. He is somebody who has had a 2,000 total yard season, but he is also seeing a lot of workload and carries and touches and opportunities to maybe get banged up, which makes Tyler Goodson a bit appealing because this is a fast and explosive running back who we saw be very efficient earlier this season. Like all the way back in week 5 when he finally got some of his first usage of the season, and he only had 8 touches in this game, but he totals 57 yards on those 8 touches, like 8.7 fantasy points, nothing to look at, but if you're paying close attention, and the Colts coaches were in this one, the dude was averaging 7 yards per touch. And eventually, every single week while Jonathan Taylor was out for a month, Tyler Goodson started to take more and more work away from Trey Sermon, who was extremely inefficient, slow, basically a fullback, and Goodson was starting to become the lead back while Taylor was out. Like if you actually look at these game logs, of course, to start the season fantasy points right here, according to Player Profiler, nothing there while Jonathan Taylor is healthy. And then Goodson in the 3 games without Taylor, 8.7 points, 10.5, and 11.1 points. This is on limited samples while he's getting his own workload ramped up and taking touches away from Trey Sermon. He was a weekly flex option, top 30 running back option for you, including in his best performance to date so far this season, where he finally took the backfield completely away from Trey Sermon for 14 carries, finds the end zone, gets you 11.1 points. Unfortunately, then the following week, Jonathan Taylor returned to this Colts offense, and it became the Jonathan Taylor show. But the last time we saw Gibson, he was the main RB. Like a lot of people might be like, oh, it'll be a split backfield. Oh, Trey Sermon will still be involved. No. I don't think so. I think if something was to happen to Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Goodson is probably the sneakiest stash right now because he's not somebody that people are thinking about. Jonathan Taylor is back, but this is a guy that if he was to miss, Goodson probably comes into an offense that's ascending. Anthony Richardson, off of his best start of the season, probably sees 15 plus touches a week. And a reminder, this is a very talented back, ran a 4.42 40 time, 94th percentile, has above average speed, 75th percentile. Agility is awesome. We know that he can catch passes and pass protect. Nice size, and he's behind the number 2 ranked run blocking unit in the league. Again, the point of this video is to find running backs that if the starter was to go down and have just immense upside. Maybe not like top 5 overall upside for Tyler Goodson, but I would say top 20 flex option, definitely RB2 for you, which will help you win weeks. Now, before we get into this next running back that honestly is probably the #1 stash in all of fantasy football right now, I want to quickly tell you about our new fantasy blueprint sponsor and the sponsor of this channel, Vivid Picks, because this is pretty exciting news. If you love fantasy sports or just enjoy making predictions like I do, I believe this app is for you, because Vivid Picks makes it extremely easy to get in on the action. All you have to do is pick players, make your predictions, and then watch the games unfold. It's literally that simple. Now, they have multiple game modes. They have the versus mode or the more or less. I personally like the more or less as well. You just take the more or less on yardage, on props, on touchdowns, on a whole bunch of stats. It makes it really simple and fun. Now, here is an example of a play that I have for Thursday Night Football this week. And if you're watching this after Thursday Night Football, they have tons of plays for the Sunday games as well and other sports. I currently took a nice little touchdown play right here. 2-pick touchdown play for Thursday night. Najee Harris, who continues to see 16 to 20 plus opportunities a game, for him to score against a suspect Browns defensive line that's banged up, and for the most part this year has been pretty hot and cold. And then Jerry Jeudy, who is coming off of another 10 plus target game, who ranks top 3 in the NFL over the past month with Jameis Winston in overall volume at the wide receiver position, believe it or not. I took him to score a touchdown. He scored last week. We're taking him again. So I pair these 2 plays together. You could take these exact 2 plays if you want as well, or any other plays for Thursday Night Football. And the best part is, if you are a new member, all you have to do is sign up with code SAL, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. So if you put in $20, you get 20. If you put in 100, they'll give you 100 right back. So if you want to get in on the action today, just download the Vivid Picks app now. Use code SAL so you can get your first deposit matched up to $100. A final big thank you for Vivid Picks for sponsoring the Fantasy Blueprint in this video. Now let's get back to it. Now, that guy who I believe is the #1 stash right now in all of fantasy is Blake Corum of the Rams, their 3rd-round rookie. We've discussed him at points this season, but I think it's time to discuss him again. The 3rd-round rookie deserves our attention because this was one of the best running backs in all of college football the last 3 seasons. That's why the Rams took him in the 3rd round. 2022, his big year, 1,400 yards, would have entered the NFL draft, probably would have been a 2nd-round pick if he didn't have the knee injury to end his season. Comes back in 2023, takes some time to get ramped up, has over 1,100 yards, scores 26 touchdowns, basically puts the team on his back to win a conference championship with Michigan and Jim Harbaugh that year. And then he goes to the NFL draft. He gets taken in the 3rd round by the Rams. He gets a lot of hype because now Sean McVay's his coach. This offense was looking great last year when healthy, and now, okay, is it going to be a split backfield? Well, to start the season, we saw 0 snaps in week 1 for the rookie when all the hype in the offseason was like, oh, he might be the new starting running back for this team. No, it was all Kyren Williams, and it has been for most of the season. In week 2, Blake Corum sees his first usage. 8 carries, but all 8 came in garbage time. They were the final 8 snaps in plays of the game. They were just trying to run out the clock. So now you're in this situation where the guy really hasn't been useful at all. He's been operating as the running back 3 behind not only Kyren Williams, but at that point in the season, he was also behind Ronnie Rivers. So you're starting to say, okay, let's drop Blake Corum. And a lot of people did. But then we started to see slowly over the past month or 2 of the season, his role get stronger as the RB2 on this team. It started in week 5 against the Green Bay Packers, and this will not be seen by any of your league mates. 4.3 fantasy points means nothing to anybody. Just 6 total touches for 33 yards, although he's averaging nearly 6 yards per touch on those. The big thing here was that in this week, his usage surpassed Ronnie Rivers. Ronnie Rivers wasn't playing. It was Blake Corum as the clear RB2, the only other running back to see a snap behind Kyren Williams. And this usage has remained true all the way up to this past week in week 11. It was Blake Corum again, the only other running back behind Williams to see a snap. And not only did he see a snap, he saw 10, a season high 20% of the snaps. It led to 6 opportunities in this game compared to 15 for Kyren Williams. That is a season high in overall opportunities compared to Williams, 6 compared to 15. So things are starting to trend in the right direction. Don't get me wrong, Kyren Williams is still the starting running back on this team. They trust him in pass protection. They trust him in all situations. They love him. But slowly but surely, they're starting to trust Blake Corum in these situations as well. Again, the 6 touches this past week, 28 total yards, again, 5 yards per touch or so. This is a guy who's trending in the right direction. And the biggest takeaway here is that right now he's the clear RB2. Ronnie Rivers has not seen a snap in like over a month of the season. It's been all Blake Corum at this point. He's trending in the right direction. They continue to say nice things about him throughout the week in practice. And if anything was to happen to Kyren Williams, which let's be honest here, the guy has dealt with 3 different foot and ankle injuries over the past 2.5 years alone of his first 2.5 years of his NFL career. He's been hobbled and banged up. If anything happens to Kyren Williams, I believe Blake Corum goes into a workhorse role. I believe the 16 to 20 touches a game you're getting out of Kyren Williams, passing down usage, red zone usage, all goes to Blake Corum, who have proved not only in college, but in sample sizes this year that he can handle that workload. So Blake Corum to me is the #1 stash right now, available in 85% of fantasy leagues. I think you stash him. If you have Kyren Williams, you're crazy if if this guy's not on your roster entering the fantasy postseason. And the next guy who's also worth a stash is the Cardinals' third-round rookie running back in Trey Benson. Trey Benson, look, we've had a lot of rookies have success so far this year at the running back position. You've had Bucky Irving look like one of the best running backs in the league explosiveness-wise. Same can be said for Tyron Tracy of the Giants. Heck, Ray Davis has had weeks where he looks like one of the best running backs in the NFL. But believe it or not, if we're talking about like the best prospect in the NFL draft during the draft process before they stepped on an NFL field, Trey Benson was highly regarded as maybe being that guy. Because for starters, this guy has like NFL ready size and speed is the best way to put it. 98th percentile speed score is fantastic, faster than I think a lot of people thought. We knew he was quick, but maybe not that quick. And the impressive part is he has 4.39 speed despite being 216 pounds. Normally you see that type of speed around a 200-pound running back. So he has not only the size and the power, but the speed, a very rare and elite combination. And he's best known as being a power back who breaks tackles. In his 2022 season at Florida State, he set a broken tackle record according to PFF, which was previously held by guys like Kenneth Walker and David Montgomery. Now, of course, the lead back in this backfield is still James Conner, who for like the his third straight season on this team, has looked fantastic. But the truth is, this guy is turning 30 years old very soon. The truth is, he has left 3 different games with injuries so far this season. He was able to return. They were kind of minor injuries, but he left those games. And in his NFL career, he averages 4 missed games per season. So Conner's health is always sort of a question mark. As long as he remains healthy, he's the lead back, sure. But the whole point of this is to have a stash just in case something happens, because Trey Benson has been good on his limited sample so far this season, averaging 5 yards per touch. We talked about him being a broken tackle guy in college. It's translating to the NFL against bigger and better linebackers. 11th in broken tackle rate this season so far. Again, a smaller sample, sure, but he has been proven to be an efficient running back this season. And I know what some people might say, even if Conner misses times, won't this be a split backfield? And in some regards, yes, because Amari DiMercado has been a okay option for them this season, more so as a pass catching back. But that's fine. If you want to put Trey Benson in on first and second down and then Amari DiMercado on third downs, that's okay. That means Trey Benson is going to see, most likely more weeks than not, 12 to 14 plus carries a week. Probably see the goal line usage. He'll earn a couple of targets here and there. He'll see at least 15 opportunities per game if Conner was to miss time, is my projection on him. He's somebody that I'm looking to stash, a top 5 stash in fantasy right now. And another piece of this is, like, if we look ahead to the next piece, if Conner was to miss time, look at Trey Benson's rest of season schedule and into the fantasy postseason. You get a Patriots bottom 10 run defense, a Panthers, arguably the worst run defense in the NFL, and then you get the Rams, which is a struggling defensive line. It's getting healthier, but still not one of the best units by any means. So stash Trey Benson, and then this next one might confuse you a little bit, but hear me out. Because this is a video about running backs, but I had to throw one wide receiver in there because I think there's only one wide receiver in the entire NFL who is an actual stash based on if a player got hurt on his team, and that is Dontavian Wicks of the Green Bay Packers. Because this is the only situation where, look, the top 3 receivers are clearly, in terms of snaps, Romeo Doubs, this past week, Christian Watson, and then Jayden Reed. It is clearly Dontavian Wicks is the number 4, so he goes from being a bench player on his own team to being a legit starter if just one of these 3 guys, now it doesn't have to be one guy, one of the 3, so there's a lot of chances here were to miss any time. And I can't even think of like another situation like this. Maybe it's like the Colts with all their 4 wide receivers, but they're nowhere near as talented. That offense is nowhere near as good as Green Bay's. And here's the thing, we already have a sample this season of Dontavian Wicks earning volume when a player misses time. Christian Watson left in week 4, Wicks ends up earning 26% of the targets. Christian Watson misses week 5, Wicks for the 2nd straight week leads the team ahead of Jayden Reed, ahead of Tucker Kraft, ahead of Romeo Doubs in targets with 25%. So yes, in those games, if you recall, he did have some drops. It was not overall great production for him, for somebody who picked up off the waiver wire, but he's still earning volume whenever he sees more opportunities. Eventually that's going to click for a talented player. Because there have been 4 games this season where Wicks has ran at least 50% of the Packers routes, and here's what he's done. In these contests, he's earned a 24% target share, which leads the team during that stretch. The fellow Wicks for me is like the only deeper league stash right now that I would have on my bench at the wide receiver position. That doesn't mean wide receiver in general on your bench, just a stash option if somebody else was to get hurt on his team. Other than that, just get all upside running backs, which I think Roschon Johnson fits that build. And Roschon Johnson's interesting because he's a weekly flex option now for you, in my opinion, especially in week 12 with all the bye weeks coming up, but he's also an extreme upside player if DeAndre Swift was to miss time. Because here's what happened in week 11 with a brand new play caller. So the first time with this play caller, Roschon sees 44% of the snaps. His usage increases a ton. 34% of the routes run in this game. I mean, let's just look at the backfield breakdown in this one against the Green Bay Packers. It's DeAndre Swift has 14 carries. He had a good game, 5 yards per carry. A lot of it came on his 39-yard run. Other than that, he wasn't all that efficient. But Roschon Johnson, 10 carries. So Roschon's getting 10 carries and a touchdown. He had the majority of the carries inside the 5 and 10-yard line, by the way, including the goal line touchdown to take the lead over Green Green Bay late. 14 carries for Swift, 10 for Roschon Johnson. This was a pretty dramatic change in terms of just the past usage when Swift is playing and seeing the far majority of the touches and snaps in this backfield and Roschon wasn't involved. The new play caller this week, yeah, he had Roschon involved, and I think that's going to be sticky moving forward. And like, if you look at the schedule, he's going to be facing his division a lot. He'll have a matchup against the Seahawks and 49ers, which are fine matchups. Like, I think Roschon is this interesting back that you can flex in week 12, maybe even in week 14 as well against the 49ers when you just need somebody because there's so many teams on bye. He's a guy who can catch passes. He can pass protect, probably better than Swift in both of those areas. And if Swift was to miss any time, I think he immediately becomes the RB1 on this team. Because keep in mind, they just recently traded away Khalil Herbert to the Cincinnati Bengals. There's nobody left behind him. Another guy, another rookie, and we've talked about a lot in this video, that you should be stashing in your leagues. This is for your deeper leagues now. The other guys we've mentioned I'd stash before this guy, maybe your 14-team leagues, 12-team leagues with deeper benches. 4th-round rookie Ray Davis for the Buffalo Bills. Because I think he's just one injury away to James Cook, the starter in Buffalo, from being a legitimate league winner. And we've already seen it. We've already seen the sample of this, right? Way back in, I believe it was week 6 when it was a Monday Night Football game against the Jets. James Cook was kind of like a late scratch ruled out. You get 23 opportunities here, 150 total yards, and 18.2 fantasy points without even scoring a touchdown for Ray Davis. He looked extremely explosive in this game, but since then, James Cook has come back. He's gone to being the backup again, and a lot of people have dropped Davis. He's available in over 80% of leagues. And I do know that Ty Johnson is still out there, and even in week 11, we'll show you shortly that Ty Johnson was very involved in this offense, but I just think that that was a matchup thing. We already saw it in week 6. When James Cook misses time, Ray Davis is the guy that got all the opportunities, not Ty Johnson. But even with James Cook back these past couple of weeks and really the past month, we've still seen some spike upside weeks from Ray Davis. Like in week 7 with James Cook back, a week later, you get a goal line touchdown over James Cook. You get 11.7 fantasy points on 6 touches. Like in week 9, when he ends up having a 60-plus yard touchdown, the team needed to play in the passing game desperately, and he gets it. 70 receiving yards. On 6 total touches, he has 90 yards, 17 fantasy points. Again, this usage is not sustainable when you're only getting 5 or 6 touches a game, but he's that explosive and dynamic. That's how good he is. If Cook was to miss time, he's a league winner. And as I mentioned earlier, this past week against the Chiefs was just a little bit of like a wonky usage. I think this is a little bit of a game script. I think they were trying to try some new things to get the Chiefs off guard, because this is a big game, not only for seeding, but obviously just the past few years, a big rivalry here. So you get Ty Johnson, 33 snaps, James Cook, 27, Ray Davis, 15. You scroll over here, though, the carries are split up 5, 9 for Cook, 5 for Ray Davis. Like, Ty Johnson having a lot of snaps here will be something that people take away. I don't think it's all that interesting. I think it's just kind of the specific matchup here. I don't think it's indicative of anything moving forward, because as mentioned earlier, remember back in week 6, it was Ray Davis with 20 carries and looked good on them. Ty Johnson just 4 carries. He looked good on them too, but just 4 carries. It was Ray Davis with 3 catches for 55 yards, and it was Ty Johnson all the way down here with 0 receptions, right? So again, that was also just a 1-week sample. So maybe it'll be a little bit closer than that, but I would be betting on Ray Davis, the younger, more explosive back guy who's really good in the red zone throughout his college career, if James Cook was to go down. Now, this next guy I think is very sneaky. Nobody seems to want this guy, but he's coming out of his bye week. Now's a nice time to attack. But before we get into him, the gentleman's agreement. We shake on it right here. If you made it this far into the video, this late into the season as well, you find this video entertaining, engaging, helpful, whatever it might be, all you got to do to repay the favor of these 6 to 8 hours it takes to make these videos is hit the subscribe button. It goes a really long way. We call it the gentleman agreement. We shake on it. I don't know if you'll do it or not, but the whole point is, you know, we have some morals here. We shake on it, hit the subscribe button, and we all have a good time. Now, that running back that everybody's forgetting about as a stash option, again, not somebody who right now you can go out and start, but a stash is going to be Sean Tucker, because here's the deal. Sean Tucker's coming out of his bye week, and like we discussed the upside of these players. We know Sean Tucker has upside. Remember the only time we got to see him in an expanded role when Rachaad White missed earlier this year? Because in that game, we saw Sean Tucker be the RB1 with 37 fantasy points out of nowhere in a nice matchup against the Saints. He goes for nearly 200 total yards, multiple touchdowns on just 17 touches. It was his coming out party for Sean Tucker, and it was great to see. But of course, the following week, we end up getting Bucky Irving and the big one, Rachaad White, back from injury. And Sean Tucker, he remained involved a little bit. They said it'll be a 3-headed backfield. That really only lasted for like a week or a week and a half. And now he's back to really not being super useful in fantasy. But the crazy part is he's had just 33 touches this year. He's averaging 8.6 yards per touch on those. The guy has been dynamic. And all it really takes is one injury to one of these running backs, either Bucky Irving or Rachaad White. The team is coming out of their bye week. And if you look at the rest of the season schedule, you want these guys on your team. You want Rachaad White on your team. You want Bucky Irving on your team. And you want Sean Tucker stashed, especially if you own one of those other 2 guys. Because look at this. They get the Giants right out of the bye week. Bottom 5 run defense. Panthers, bottom 5 run defense. They get the Raiders, bottom 10 run defense. The Chargers are probably the best run defense they'll face, but at this point, I think middle of the pack. Cowboys, bottom 5 run defense, and the Panthers, again, bottom 5. Like, they're legitimately facing, in 5 out of their next 6 games, just bottom 10 run defenses overall. Anybody in this backfield that sees opportunities is going to find success. So if there was an injury to Bucky Irving or Rachaad White, Sean Tucker becomes somebody who is a weekly flex option for 12 touches for a guy averaging nearly 9 yards per touch. Yeah, it's something to think about. Another guy to think about, and this one seems pretty obvious, is Jordan Mason, because look, this one speaks for itself. We've seen the guy be a workhorse this year. Through the first 5 weeks before he suffered his shoulder injury on Thursday Night Football, he was averaging 21 rush attempts per game, led the NFL, 1.6 targets per game, so nearly 23 opportunities per game in his first 5 starts of the year. Of course, that's great. But of course, now Christian McCaffrey has returned the last 2 weeks and he's seen 90+% of the snaps. But also, Christian McCaffrey is dealing with Achilles tendonitis. Maybe not anymore, but Achilles tendonitis is something that just will pop up again. If you put too much load on it too quick, which he's getting a lot of volume right now, it will pop up and then you're probably out at least another 2 to 4+ weeks. I hope that doesn't happen for McCaffrey. It's been awesome seeing him back and managing a big workload. And just because he's managed it for 2 weeks does not mean that this injury is completely in the past for him. Again, tendonitis is something that just flares up when it's just one carry too much, one step too much, and now it's a problem. So I do think Jordan Mason is still at the tippy top. He's like up there with Blake Corum when I was talking about earlier for the best stash the rest of the season. He's up there if you have a roster spot, especially if you're a Christian McCaffrey fantasy manager. Go get Mason, who's now been dropped in a ton of leagues. And another guy in that similar ballpark is Braylon Allen, the Jets' 4th-round rookie running back, because the first month of the season, this guy was seeing like 10+ touches per game, even 10+ fantasy points per game, highly involved in the pass catching game. But then a lot of things went quiet when Robert Saleh got fired, because after Saleh got fired, you were just seeing way less usage for Braylon Allen. 11 snaps, just 5 snaps, 3 carries and 2 carries, as opposed to him getting 10 opportunities per game. This was cut into like half or a third, and he was basically useless, but it has gotten a little bit better over the past couple of games. He's now seeing 6 to 7 opportunities per contest. And although that's still not elite or great or as good as it was earlier in the season, we just know that Breece Hall is the starting running back on this team. That's pretty clear here. But again, this is a player who is a stash. If something was to happen to Breece Hall, you do get Braylon Allen in an offense that's really not using any other running backs. Like Isaiah Davis is another rookie, has not been used anywhere near as much as Braylon Allen. And Braylon Allen, the upside comes in that he could be a 3-down back for you. He's 235 pounds. He has elite size. He has very good speed for his size. Look at this according to Player Profiler, 95th percentile speed. That's top 5% of all time. He has the power, and the big question was, can this guy pass protect and catch passes? And so far this season, he's excelled in both of those areas, at least based on expectations. So these have been the top 10 players you should be stashing as you enter your fantasy postseason. Guys that if you just have one of these players on your bench and something happens to the starter in front of them, now you have a weekly starter and potential league winner. And if you want to see the other players you should be adding specifically for week 12 who just had some pretty interesting week 11s, that video is right here for the waiver wires. Check it out before your waivers run. There might even be some guys still available if your waivers already happened for this week. Appreciate you tuning in, beautiful people. Hit the subscribe button before you go and check out our fantasy blueprint sponsor, Vivid Picks. I'll see you all in the next one.